I really want to welcome you and thank you for coming to sort of engage in a conversation about trust. We started the consortium about 18 months ago with what we think is a clear mission. We want to help to expand the number of organizations that can be legitimately called trustworthy. Why? Because they demonstrate, they manifest the values, practices, and processes that warrant stakeholder trust. So we make a distinction between trust and trustworthiness. We don't believe we have a crisis of trust. We believe we have a crisis of trustworthiness. Right? And that the way we're going to solve the trust problem is by building authentic trustworthiness. But here's the problem. This is a Harris poll data over a long period of time. It's incredibly low. By the way, if we were to show this same chart for the US Congress, it would be even lower. So business actually, from that frame, they're looking pretty good. There is actually a science here. We have 50 years of really good research in anthropology, psychology, economics about what trust is and how we build it. Unfortunately, like a lot of academic research, it's not being used adequately or enough. And so that's one of the reasons why we exist is we're not really focused on writing articles that other academics are going to read. We're focused on writing articles that leaders will read and do something about. I define trust as confident reliance in a person, group, or organization when there is risk and uncertainty and vulnerability. When there's risk, uncertainty, and vulnerability, we want to be dealing with agents that we can rely on. We want to have a sense of confidence that in the stormy seas, they're going to do what's right. And so you see actually data over a long period of time with two different institutions. The top line is Americans' confidence in the U.S. military. And it's actually grown over the past 30 years. The bottom line is Americans' confidence in the U.S. Congress. Now, I would ask you, why has the military actually grown confidence? They do what's asked of them. They're competent. They put themselves in harm's way for other people. They deliver on their mission, in a sense. When people, companies, and systems send signals that emit trust signals, trust scores go up. When companies and institutions send signals of distrust, trust scores go down. So the real question is, how do we manage that? What do all of these trust violations have in common? Upper left is the Challenger accident. Over the right, the Gulf oil spill, LIBOR, Lehman Brothers. What do they have all in common? By the way, I don't think in any one of these cases, these people got up in the morning and said, whose trust can I betray today? Well, how can we have some fun by destroying the economy and polluting the environment? That's actually a much more interesting story. These are large, complex organizations that are operating with multiple incentives, with feedback loops that they don't fully understand. And actually, there's a social process called the normalization of deviance, where the culture actually helps produce these failures. But that is knowable. We can understand that phenomenon and prevent it. And there's a lot of companies that have done that. Now, are these companies perfect? Absolutely not. But here's what they've done. They have systematically said we can build a virtuous organization, and step by step by step, they have put things in place to do that. Right? Now, we just need more organizations to sort of follow that lead. So you sometimes hear this expression, rogue employee, bad apple. That's not the big problem. The big problem is bad branches of apples. So think of a trust ecosystem. And surrounding this tree are the capital markets and how they operate, or the regulators and how they operate. So there's an ecosystem around this tree. And then there's a root structure, which is what's the culture in this company? Are we embedding ethics, compliance, do the right thing in the culture? I've actually studied companies and had really high trust companies and had that people say to me, I ask them, what's the culture here? And they'll say, do the right thing. And the first time I heard that, I was like, what the hell does that mean? I mean, come on. And then the next person said it, the next person. And actually, they get it. They understand what the right thing to do is, and they know they better do it. That's the culture. And doing the wrong thing is countercultural. We understand what trustworthiness is. It's not 50 things. It's tribal. We trust people that are similar to us and share our values. We trust people whose interests are aligned with us. We trust companies that are benevolent and people that are benevolent, that care about us, and will sort of not throw us under the bus, but will maybe take a hit for us. We trust people and companies that are capable and competent. We trust people and companies that are predictable and have integrity, that aren't random. And we trust companies that engage openly, transparently, have a conversation with us, particularly in a world of Twitter, right? Engagement. And so the chief communications officer becomes critical. Chief communications officer, ethics officers, human resource officers, the C-suite caring about trust and embedding it. We trustors make decisions. We create a market for the trustworthy or a market for the untrustworthy. If we invest in those companies, if we go to work in those companies that are trustworthy, that are doing the right things, we give them incentive. One way to interpret some of the crises that we've had is that we haven't been very good trustors. Graham said that. We need to learn what trustworthiness is and discern better. And if we do, we'll create a market for the trustworthy, and things will get better. Boards need tools to understand what does a trustworthy organization look like, what are trustworthy leaders, how do they behave, and are they doing it? And that, to some degree, boards have been frozen, and they need to be unfrozen if we're going to build trustworthy organizations. I wrote a chapter in a Oxford Press book on the global financial crisis, and my takeaway from that is that if there's one thing we could do for companies that would make them more trustworthy, it would be board reform. If boards could drill down using certain tools to figure out if the companies that they are stewards of are in fact trustworthy, that would change a lot. We heard about sort of a new era of transparency, and perhaps with social media and TripAdvisor and other information tools where we can actually understand what companies are doing now because things are more transparent. It provides us with an opportunity to take action. Information is power. And so in a sense, we have more power than we ever have if we choose to use it wisely and invest in the trustworthy. Trust comes from having a trustworthy organizational system. And that actually it has a number of different components. It is an external stakeholder focus, not just on one stakeholder, but across stakeholders, customers, investors, employees. But it's also engineering a social and technical system within the organization that actually can produce signals of trustworthiness. So what does that mean? It means you have to be a values-driven organization, mission and purpose. You have to do the important work of figuring out what do you want to be. That organizational system has to have a culture and a DNA that cares about stakeholders, that is benevolent, that isn't self-focused, is permeated by stewardship, concern for others. At Fordham we have an expression, men and women for others, which is, by the way, the opposite of opportunism, which is a root cause of the global financial crisis. Nobody really wants to go to work for a company where they don't feel there's trust. It's a pretty horrible existence, isn't it? I mean, you kind of go home and you're stressed out. So low trust environments are painful environments. And there's not a great deal of human flourishing in low trust environments. So if we care about human beings and creating organizations where human flourishing can happen, then you cannot have that without trust. Open communication is important to trust. It's one of the 6 pieces. Well, we ask questions where employees have to rate their leader on, is the leader approachable? Can the leader hear bad news without killing the messenger? Right? And a whole series of questions that really get at, do leaders listen? Those are behaviors, leadership behaviors, that are critical to an element of trustworthiness. If they're present, you probably have a more trustworthy organization. If they're absent, you have a problem. And if you know you have a problem by looking at the metrics, you can do something about it. We say we care about trust, but we don't make time for it. It's not really a priority. I think that's part of the problem. I think we're so busy running around with doing stuff that not enough organizations are thinking long-term about fundamental relationships with stakeholders. And it's the most important word you can have in a relationship. So trust is a word we use to characterize a relationship. When that relationship is characterized by trust, there's confidence, there's cooperation, there is mutual reciprocity and engagement. It's a very virtuous thing to have in a relationship. It's how progress happens. You know, if you are in a country where there's low trust, what do you have? Revolutions. A lack of progress. Money is under the mattress. What happened during the global financial crisis? Money stopped moving. Why? Low trust. Trust is required for cooperation and progress. There's no better time to start working on trust when it's really low. You're ahead of the curve and you get a competitive advantage. So, and some companies actually are doing that. We've actually been contacted by some banks that realize that the game is now and will be in the future about trust, and they want to understand, you know, how to build a trustworthy bank. By the way, where would you put your money? A trustworthy bank, right?